Hello and welcome to this FPL Gameweek 14 edition of FPL Hacks with me, Holly Shand. Today I'm going to be looking at my top 5 tips for approaching the midweek deadline. Let's get into it. Now my first tip is stating the obvious, but don't miss the deadline. The deadline comes on Tuesday the 30th of November at 6 p.m. UK time. So a lot of managers will miss the deadline. I know it sounds obvious, but please make sure that you don't miss it. Set an alarm on your phone for a couple of hours before and make sure that you're sorted. One good strategy that you can use is have a look at your team now and get it roughly set, and then you can go back in closer to the deadline to make sure there's no other changes that you want to make. So if you set your team up immediately after the game week 13 deadline, it's called setting up your bus team. Get that sorted, and then that should see you through in case you do miss the deadline. Now my second tip involves when you should make transfers. Now there's unlikely to be a lot of new injuries that crop up between game week 13 and game week 14 because clubs aren't going to have players in training for too many sessions between their fixtures in game week 13 and game week 14. But we will have a full round of managers' press conferences over the course of Monday and Tuesday. So I would encourage you to check the injury news following those on Tuesday afternoon once all those press conferences have taken place, and then once you've got all the information including any injuries, then you can make those transfers. Now if you've got the exact funds and you've got a definite move that you need to make, obviously by all means go and do that so that you don't get priced out by the price changes. But because there's only a matter of 48 hours between the end of game week 13 and the start of game week 14, we shouldn't see too many price changes in that window. So hopefully you won't get priced out of any potential moves. Now we will see a lot of rotation because we've got 3 game weeks in quick succession: weekend, midweek and weekend. A couple of teams that have really stood out to me as likely to rotate are Manchester City, Chelsea and West Ham. We know that Pep Guardiola and Thomas Tuchel like to rotate anyway, and those clubs play Sunday, Wednesday and then Saturday, so some of the most congested schedules. So for that reason, it's really important that you have a strong bench. So if you've got 1 or 2 players that don't play, that don't start on your bench, now is the time to use your transfers to strengthen your bench if you've not got any injuries in your main starting 11, because this is the sort of week where we will see players rested, and then for that reason you will need to draw on the powers of your bench players. So pay attention, make sure you order your bench in a particular order in terms of priority of who's got the best fixture, who you fancy to get the most points, but make sure that you have got some depth on your bench. Again then, because we're going to see a lot of rotation, my tip number 4 is to not make unnecessary transfers this week. If you've got a player that has maybe been out of form for a couple of games but has got good fixtures, but you prefer a different player, sometimes making those unnecessary moves could really come back to haunt you because we're expecting to see that rotation. So it's not the week to take a big point hit because the damage can be done. I think with the 3 games in quick succession, if managers are going to rest players, it's likely to be in the midweek fixture for those players that aren't able to perform in quick successive games of 90 minutes. So if you know that you've got a player that is injury prone or maybe a bit older and hasn't got the ability to meet those turnaround times, certainly using transfers around those players to bring them in probably isn't the wisest thing to do this week. Now my final tip for FPL Game Week 14 is to play it safe with the captaincy. Mo Salah has been in sensational form all season and has become a permanent captain option. Now, there will be temptation this week to move the armband elsewhere, particularly when we look at Spurs and Chelsea, who are both playing promoted teams this week in Brentford and Watford. Salah, probably not the easiest of fixtures on paper, away at Everton. It is the Merseyside derby though, so I would be very, very surprised, unless an injury was to crop up, I'd be very surprised if Salah did not start that game because it is a high profile game, even though Everton have had their struggles defensively this season. So I can bet on Salah starting in that game, so you should absolutely give him the armband. Don't get sidetracked and be looking at maybe your Chelsea defenders or Kane or Son from Spurs who could get rotated. Stay safe with Salah, and then if he does not deliver, because he's going to be the overwhelming captain pick, if he doesn't deliver, then you're not going to see huge red arrows off the back of it because he's going to be the popular captain pick anyway. Those are my 5 top tips then for FPL Game Week 14. If you've got any transfer headaches and dilemmas, get in the comments and I'll do my best to answer all of them before Tuesday's deadline at 6 p.m. Don't miss it. Good luck everyone for FPL Game Week 14.